Right then, hello. Welcome back. Welcome to. I'm back in England. It's good to be back. I hope you have a good summer. Perhaps, hopefully. Mine's not been excellent, gotta say. This time last year, I was a bit more hopeful than I am now, that's for sure. Because I was starting uni, and but yeah. I hope everything's okay. I hope everything's okay with you guys. I hope anything's okay these days. So yeah, you might know that despite having this YouTube channel and a small YouTube channel, and considering myself to be, let's say, reactionary at this point, despite these things, I'm actually extremely poorly read. Well, I've decided to change this, and happily I can say that that time is coming to an end. I've read 2 books since the beginning of the summer, one of which was 1984, and I wanted to go through some of the connections I was making in my head as I was reading through. So yeah, number 1 can be what we'll call the end of politics, and it is explained in the book, in this alternate timeline for the wider world, that towards the beginning of the 20th century, political scientists at the time were more or less cottoning onto the reality of the idea that history and politics itself is occurs in a cyclical fashion, right? And this cycle could be understood and therefore changed or manipulated in a way. And I think that throughout the book there is this theme of the current regime in the story being kind of hyper self-conscious, insofar as they kept comparing themselves to the previous oligarchies, previous regimes that ruled, and where they go wrong. And I won't spoil it for you, but Orwell proposes like a very clever explanation for this, in my opinion. Part of this explanation, however, I will go into, and I think it's a very interesting point Orwell makes about the point about the role of time. That is, so yeah, one of the main points in the book that Orwell is trying to warn us about is that if one controls the present, i.e. Controls the perceptions of everyone's minds, and can kind of sever the link between reality and one's own interpretation of that reality by brainwashing and controlling the flow of information and such. This then means that you can also control the past, as it were. And this was a pill that I was very happy to swallow, because it all kind of, my understanding has been increased. It's that the past doesn't actually exist. It only exists in the memory and in record. And so once the means to change the past have been achieved, this now means that the past can just be whatever you want. And obviously the party goes all in on this, right? And it's not even like the past used to exist one way, but now it's been changed. It's that it was never even changed, right? it's always been whatever the party said it was, and there's no possible way to contradict themselves, right? Even if one day a set of events are recorded and published, and then on the next day the same set of events is reversed and then published again, like they're kind of both simultaneously the truth, and there is no contradiction, right? Yeah, I know it sounds a bit. I'll just keep going. Right, because if you have the power to enforce it by what I just said, controlling information, then yeah, bye truth in its kind of Platonist form. In the book, Winston, the protagonist, his day job was to kind of retroactively edit the records as needed to make Big Brother look good. So yeah, his office job was literally like producing new categorical truth. So it's this combination of no physical record that could contradict the verdict of the party, and the power to ensure that equals real truth changes from an objective phenomenon to a subjective one on the basis of an all-powerful regime which can enforce it. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. Another part of this eternal kind of Malthusian civilizational cycle thing that I wanted to mention as well was that as I was reading through, it felt like this fictional regime, whatever, in sort of a Tower of, is it Babel or Babel? Tower of Babel way. They were trying to stop the cycle, as it were. And it kind of occurred to me that, once you kind of halt the civilizational cycle, this means you're also kind of stopping time itself. And this was something I was thinking about independently before I read 1984, was that with Trumpton, right? The good old Trumpton. The aim there is to create a community that could basically just loop forever, right? And this brought up in my mind the question of to what extent is the Trumpton project actually trying to pause history itself, right? Because if nothing changes, then has time actually passed at all? And I get that it's a bit more complicated than that, but going back to the Big Brother regime, they do talk about it in terms of stopping history, and all in service of this one goal that they've got. And it's going to carry on forever and all this. And I wonder if that's something that we really want deep down. And I know you could view this easily as subversion, but when I think about it, it makes sense to me that, in a small way at least, like in order for time to pass, things need to change. And there is part of me that simply wants to kind of sit back and admire the kind of romanticism of the civilizational cycle as this eternal, unchallengeable thing, and have more of like a fatalistic attitude towards it. Earlier I mentioned Tower of Babel. And this brings me on to my next part of the thinking, which is that although I think Orwell makes like a really good effort at exploring this dystopian future, whatever, you still have to accept that to achieve the goals of the party and break the cycle, as it were, in the story they literally have to like alter the human nature itself. Like they're trying to delete like sexual pleasure from the brains of the party members, and they treat their party members like very inhumanly, like unnaturally, with complete surveillance and things too. And to me, it just, I don't know, it just kind of seems all a bit much. There would be something that they hadn't accounted for. The neurologists would fail or there would be like a disease which would just destabilize the whole thing, and then some cycle would start anew. One thing is for certain though, and Orwell is spot on about this, and I'm sure lots of us have become very red-pilled on this, is that of all the things that could challenge the supremacy of the party, the general peasantry, or the proles as they call them in the book, is definitely not one of them, right? I very much enjoyed the way Orwell describes the proletariat in this book, right? It's a mixture of just pure disgust, but also with a kind of romanticism attached to it. Disgust because obviously they are just this human, and I love the way he describes them as well. It's just this human mass, this rabble, like no more spiritually significant than actual cattle, who are just kind of preoccupied with their days, too disorganized to ever revolt. Not to mention the total disregard for them by the party, except on a very functional level. And Winston, the main character, he kind of views them with this, because he's like this secret individual rebel, if you like, a rebel just simply of the mind, and he kind of views them with a strange kind of hopefulness and a weird kind of love, because they're still human in an internal, instinctive and animalistic way. I kind of share this view as well for their own peasantry, like insofar as they're hopeless against organised minorities, as has clearly been shown throughout history. But actually, in 1984, I kind of do see what's beautiful about them too. At least the proles get to live with each other, more or less separately from the regime, and at least they get to have families and jobs and be ethnically homogenous, albeit it's a rough life. They aren't constantly attacked and degraded like they are in our time. They aren't demoralized. Maybe that's a shallow reading, but they kind of just get left alone. Of course, the catch to that is politically they're totally neutered, but at least they get to exist and they're accepted for what they are. They kind of have their place, as it were, and there's something that attracts me about that, definitely. Whereas, like now in our timeline, the perceptions and the expectations are warped and dismantled in order to just convolute reality and further demoralize people. So that was something interesting. Well, I've not got much to say. So yeah, if you think you're a right winger and you know you should be reading something but you haven't yet, 1984 is where you should start, really. If you've got no other ideas. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, also interestingly, there is this although I felt that although oh, hello fly. I felt that reading through this book, for the liberal, it kind of automatically produces your kind of bog standard liberal critique of authoritarianism. But I like to think that Orwell was hiding an implicitly reactionary message within the work, kind of stemming from the ever so slippery slope from liberalism to communism argument. Maybe he was coming to certain conclusions back then which are quite prevalent today. So yeah, although he's used by liberals to back him up, well, at least conventionally, yeah, I actually think there's a little bit more going on there. Something a bit more anti-liberal or Malthusian or elite theory. I don't know, but you should be able to get it too if you read through it. There is also a JQ hidden in this in this work, but unfortunately we've actually run out of time, so perhaps another time we'll cut onto that one. Yeah, and with that, I think we're done here. So yeah, really enjoyed the book. Definitely read it. Definitely reread it if you've not read it for a while. And stay safe, and that is all. Carry on.